UFOs and deja vu. When all is said and done, there's an ample evidence that certain aspects of the UFO phenomenon are largely repeatable, that they happen over and over again, making it a mixed cocktail of deja vu. It is a situation that is so bizarre yet prevalent that it deserves serious study. And such a study is now at hand, and it's an in-depth one that proves there are certain coincidental aspects, quote unquote, of the phenomenon that cannot be overlooked. Are UFOs just a matter of nuts and bolts ships from another galaxy? Travelers of the universe who accidentally stumbled onto Earth and decided to make a mysterious, secretive kind of contact with our small planet's inhabitants? Can we sum up the flying saucers as an invasion continually poised to happen, but that never quite manifests itself in real-world terms that no one can deny? This may be a prevailing view for some people who have never ventured to investigate the UFO phenomenon more deeply than a smirking story on the evening news or a documentary on cable TV that focuses its efforts on providing scientific proof, quote unquote, of the alien presence on Earth. Real believers often concede that such evidence still has not been obtained, but also point to the high strangeness of witness testimony that, when taken at face value, paints a verbal picture more bizarre than any cluster of lights captured on a cell phone could possibly do. So it is that Timothy Green Beckley, a publisher, editor, and writer who heads Global Communications Inner Light Books, has issued yet another lengthy tome on the paranormal and repeated aspects of the UFO phenomenon. And this one is called UFO Deja Vu, Skinwalkers, Shapeshifters, Alien Portals, and Vortexes to Other Dimensions. The title comes from the famous joke by Baseball Hall of Fame catcher Yogi Berra, who once commented that back-to-back home runs by Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris in the 1960s were like expecting deja vu all over again. In less colorful lingo, Beckley writes, deja vu means that one has lived through a situation before, whether it is in reference to walking down a street you have never walked down previously but are doing it again, or sighting a UFO in pretty much the same locale over and over, as though it's wedged in the same spot in space. In French, the word means seen before. Meanwhile, the title reference to alien portals and vortexes to other dimensions also focuses on things outside the realm of nuts and bolts, ufology. There is something more decisively paranormal about UFOs, Beckley writes, that makes the topic much more complex and more difficult to prove. It circumvents normalcy, and you must call it the supernatural, like it or not. Portals to other dimension. To explain more about alien portals and vortexes, Beckley writes in his in-house psychic Maria D'Andrea, who sees the portals and vortexes as part of her working routine. She says that we should simplify the two words to mean doorways. Shamans and psychics use vortexes and portals all the time, Maria writes. It's more or less how we get around. Going through and exiting on the other side is our method for seeing what's going on within these other realms. Sometimes we visit portals of our own free will. Other times we just open up without warning. They just open up without warning. Once, while walking in the mountains in Pennsylvania, Maria heard a sound like she likened to a soft wind, and part of the landscape in front of her disappeared. Stars and planets became visible, as if she was floating in space. She says, as I looked, I saw what seemed to be two round discs flying erratically to some destination. I knew there were beings inside these vessels, and I wanted to see more. As I walked towards the portal, I had a feeling of being stopped. I felt like I was trying to walk forward, but was only pushing into an etheric substance that felt like jello, and I wasn't going anywhere. It was very frustrating. I automatically put up my psychic shield as a defense mechanism so that nothing could harm me. As I looked on, I noticed the ships were changing colors as they rotated. I didn't hear any sounds emanating from them, nor did I see the beings inside, but I had an overwhelming feeling they were positive and meant no harm. I was lucky to have such a positive experience, Maria continues. She said, warning, not everyone does. As I was gazing at the setting before me and trying to gather more details about the ships and their occupants, the portal closed and I found myself back in the woods again. To this day, I wonder what sort of beings were in the craft. I've opened doorways before and since, but could not get to the same place again. I think sometimes the universe just messes with you and they should have given me the proper coordinates, right? Now, whether or not we have the right to be told just who we're dealing with and where they come from, Maria's story is an excellent example of the kind of case that UFO deja vu is concerned with, namely UFO encounters with an undeniably paranormal element. UFOs and the life after death aspect. Another writer in Beckley's stable is Diane Tessman, a longtime UFO investigator, abductee, channel, and author. Diane also explains the nature of portals and vortices in her chapter. Diane writes, as a person dies, her spirit passes on through a portal which separates physical life from spiritual life. The spirit life universe is much more exciting, diverse, peaceful, and beautiful than the physical world. The portal to this world manifests as the soul leaves the physical body. Some emerging spirits perceive this portal as a brilliant light, while others simply sail towards colorful cosmic fractals, nebulas, and magnificent scenes beyond description, she said. Now, there are other kinds of portals, according to Diane, through which both angels and demons travel from their own realms. These portals exist where you least expect them, in a manner similar to the aforementioned physical life to spiritual life portals. The angels and demon portals do not stay in a specific spot. Portals fluctuate, they manifest as needed by an entity. Diane says that the vortex occurs when nature's energies become supernatural energies and intersect with other natural or supernatural energies. The transformation of energy into something supernatural is something only nature herself understands. What does a ghost light appear? Why does a ghost light appear on a mountainside? Or why does a will-o'-the-wisp glide down the valley? Cosmic beings, even UFO occupants, have sensors which detect where and when a vortex appears, and they can make use of such a corridor. Diane Tessman also worked directly with Beckley on a book called UFOs, Are They Your Passport to Heaven and Other Unearthly Realms? The two wrote about the reports of those claiming to have established some sort of contact or communication with their deceased loved ones during the course of a close encounter. Beckley writes, usually they find themselves on board a UFO, and then there in the company of some sort of alien being would be a deceased loved one, a friend, or a member of their immediate family. Some reacted to Beckley and Diane's book as though the two authors were disrespecting the dead and reaching for the outer realms of sensationalism. Beckley writes, that was not our intention, of course. We were merely passing along what we thought was reliable information we had been privileged to gather from what we were convinced were reliable sources, mainly those who had undergone such overly emotional experiences, making them burst into tears. The research of Communion's Whitley Strieber. Beckley calls on a writer named Brent Raines, who has also written about the alien connection to the next world, perhaps the world that spiritualists have long called the Summerland, a paradise awaiting us when we shuffle off this mortal coil. Brent references Anne Strieber, the late wife of best-selling Communion author Whitley Strieber. Anne wrote an article in which she describes how for years she and her husband had received large volumes of mail from readers who experienced a connection with the spirits of the dead along with the UFO visitors. She began to make a list of commonalities that she would come across in the hundreds of letters that came pouring in after the publication of the mega-seller Communion. One letter writer spelled it out, quote, they have something to do with what we call death, end quote. Brent also writes that an Alabama ghost hunter he interviewed for his Alternative Perceptions book newsletter remarked that he would not be surprised at all if it turned out that alien beings and ghosts used the same dimension as to travel between this world and theirs. Brent writes, this merging of experiences and beliefs that in the past were strictly kept between their respective and separate categories by those of various disciplines seems to gradually be catching on with some. Maybe change is in the air, end quote. Now, inside the Skinwalker Ranch, in this public, and you'll find a lot of videos on this on YouTube, Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Now, in his publisher's note preceding a chapter on the lengthy Skinwalker Ranch located in the Utah Basin in Utah, southeast of the city of Ballad, Beckley writes, the ranch takes its name from the Skinwalker of Navajo legend, of shape-shifting, malicious witches who have the supernatural ability to turn themselves into a variety of animals, mainly wolves and flesh-eating birds. By a broader definition, shape-shifting occurs when a being, usually a human, has the ability to change into another person, creature, gender, or another entity, even UFOs and demonic entities, right? These demonic entities can change into anything, even a mountain in front of you. According to an exclusive interview with documentary producer Jeremy Corbell, conducted by David Patridge, huge wolves, creatures crawling out of a hole in the air, red orbs, and large prehistoric-looking birds with a monumental wingspan are just some of the phenomena witnessed at various times on this ranch. But along with these kinds of exotic supernatural entities, the area still draws its fair share of UFOs. Researchers and radio personality Erica Lukes was with a friend on the scene at Skinwalker Ranch. Erica says, I noticed a light that appeared to be shining up on the mesa. Then we watched as the light traveled across the underside of the mesa. It appeared to extend and look like an illuminated mist. This mist moved towards us and then around us. The temperature dropped about 10 degrees. The sound became very muffled. Then it would retreat above where Skinwalker Ridge is, where, according to some of the best researchers in the world, these craft appear to move in and disappear and then come out. I noticed an amber ball of light and I photographed that. At the same time, there was an amazing lightning storm blowing through, so it was absolutely one of the most stunning and surreal experiences I've ever had, she says. Luke's story serves to illustrate Beckley's main assertion here that supernatural and UFO activity go hand in hand and are not strictly separated phenomena. Where you have shape-shifting Navajo witches, you also find the usual lights in the sky type UFOs. British paranormal researcher and prolific writer Nick Redfern also contributes to the book, writing about shapeshifters and the many forms they can take. Redfern writes, while the traditional image of the werewolf is, without a doubt, the first thing that springs to mind when a discussion of shapeshifters takes place, the truth of the matter is that there is a veritable menagerie of such infernal things in our midst. Werecats, were-tigers, were-hyenas, and were-coyotes are near the top of the monstrous list. Then there are the ancient beliefs that those who died violent deaths, or those who were themselves murderers, were often destined to return to our plane of existence in the form of hideous beasts, including wild and savage ape-like animals, fearsome black dogs with glowing and blazing red eyes, and mermaid-like things. And Redford continues, even the legendary monsters of Loch Ness, Scotland, are believed in certain monster hunting quarters to be paranormal beasts that have the ability to alter their appearances at will, as are legendary vampires, who the old legend suggests can transform into the likes of bats and wolves. Collectively, all of these things amount to an absolute army of otherworldly creatures and half-human monsters that have plagued and tormented us since the dawning of civilization, and they show zero signs of slowing down anytime soon. And Redford adds, shapeshifters are everywhere. They lurk in the shadows, in the deep woods, the expansive forests, in the dark and dank caves, and in the murky waters of our lakes and rivers, maybe even after sunset in the recesses of your very own backyard, patiently waiting to pounce. UFOs Déjà Vu is a large volume, well over 350 pages, packed with information and photos and drawing on nearly 20 contributors. Chris O'Brien provides a chapter based on his many years of experience and research into Colorado's San Luis Valley, which he describes as a paranormal Disneyland. His chapter includes photos of morphing UFOs, as strange as you can get aerial devices changing shapes in midair. This is really demonic. Now, the aforementioned Brent Ryans also investigates the San Luis Valley and brings back tales of UFOs, Bigfoot, the ubiquitous Skinwalkers, demon dogs, shape-shifting witches, and encounters with the devil himself. Joshua Warren, a longtime member of Beckley's Pool of Writers, contributes a chapter on the Brown Mountain Lights, a ghost light phenomenon in North Carolina that has long eluded objective scientific understanding. One prominent UFO researcher, Tom Dongo by name, has made a permanent home in Sedona, Arizona, one of those UFO paranormal hotspots that never seems to cool down. Among the many types of creatures cited in the Sedona area is called the Blue Man, which Tom's associate, a local ranch owner named Linda Bradshaw, was able to photograph as Tom looked on. Tom says Linda's photograph showed a left side head profile and the left shoulder of a man with blue hair, and he added, "I believe it is the first authentic picture of an alien of interdimensional origin." Hispanic writer Scott Corrales informs us about a gateway to the unknown in Puerto Rico, specifically the Adjuntas region, where recurring UFO activity stretches back to the 1950s. There is even a local law enforcement officer bearing witness to the balloon-shaped yellow lights traveling noiselessly at high speed. They travel from one side to the other and vanish into the mountains. While Beckley has assembled an impressive roster of writers for UFO Déjà Vu, he also contributes numerous chapters of his own, waxing profound on his lifetime of paranormal encounters, coupled with an intensive investigative curiosity about many topics about the nuts and bolts realms of UFO research. Bring on your strangeness stories, Beckley can handle them. If you're in the mood for some high strangeness yourself, you've come to the right place. UFO Déjà Vu surely ranks among the strangest books ever published and will take you on a journey you've likely never even imagined was possible. So this is definitely linked to the devil himself. So this is by Sean Castile on Unexplained Mysteries. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.